Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, let me begin by welcoming you and introducing myself. So I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. I know that's quite a mouthful, but I'm someone who tends to use 10 words when one will do, and I've given myself my own job title. But what that translates into is that I have the best job ever. I facilitate one-on-one angel sessions, which are an hour long and take place over the phone. It is a conversation in consciousness with you and designed to help connect you to your divine guidance and the wisdom of your soul. And then I offer ongoing one-on-one mentoring, which is also a wonderful way to support yourself as you move through a time of growth or change in your life. And then I offer a wide variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. About every 6 weeks or so, I have a new class. My classes are typically small in size, so anywhere between 4 and 10 people. So you definitely will not get lost in a crowd. I love getting to know you and supporting you. So if you'd like to learn more about my classes or any of my offerings, I invite you to visit me at my website, illuminatingsouls.com, where you can also register for my daily inspiration email blast, and you'll receive a lovely message from me every weekday. But for now, we are here to bring you love. When I say we, I mean clearly me. I'm here, yes, and the angels, the best coworkers ever. We're going to be together here with you for about an hour. I am someone who listens to a sleep podcast every single night, and my preference is for episodes that are close to an hour long. There are some sleep podcasts out there that are 20 minutes long, and that's just not enough time. I feel so much pressure to hurry up and fall asleep, which does not help me with my sleep cycle. So that's why I've designed this one to be about an hour long. And there are 2 parts to each episode. This one that we're in is the introduction, and then I usually wax poetic about something that is going on spiritually, and I bring in the angels and begin that beautiful flow of love for you that is actually always happening, but through this podcast I get to bring your awareness to it. And then the second part of the podcast is Storytime. And Storytime can be just about anything. Sometimes I'll read to you something that's in the public domain. I might flip through the pages of an old magazine and share my commentary with you. I might share with you a story from my life, or a mix-up of all of those. So each episode is a little bit different, but the thing that will always be the same is the love of the angels. It'll be flowing through every single episode for you. And also, I will speak to you in these sweet, soft tones. So there aren't going to be loud noises. There aren't going to be surprises. it's designed purposefully to be that quiet murmuring voice in the background that you can connect to, but then also your consciousness can release gently when you drift off to sleep. When I was growing up, my sister and I shared a bedroom, and our bedroom was on the second floor. And I have so many warm memories of being put to bed and hearing my parents talking downstairs, or the television would be on. And it was soft and far away. And it comforted me to know that they were there. And so this podcast, in some ways, is a tribute to that. What I recommend, especially if you're using this as a sleep aid, is to turn the volume down low, lower than you would if you were listening to an audiobook where you're trying to pay attention. So loud enough that you can hear it, for sure, but also maybe a little bit lower, turning down that metaphoric volume button. I'm old school. I remember turning down the dial, which no longer exists. We push buttons and slide fingers across the screens, but the result is the same. And so I love listening to sleep podcasts. I love listening to stories as I drift off to sleep. It's interesting because I have been really falling in love with audiobooks lately. And there's one that I have been listening to that I just finished. It's called The Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate. That is extraordinary. And I was so eager to listen to it. And so I actually put it on in the middle of the night. And I couldn't go to sleep because I was riveted, which was fine because I wasn't really sleeping. It was one of those 3 a.m. wide awake moments. And I thought I could either put on a sleep podcast and try and doze, or I could listen to the audiobook. And I chose the audiobook. But most times when I'm up at 3 a.m., I put on another sleep podcast so I can try and get a little bit more sleep. So however you choose to use this podcast, I know some of you use it to fall asleep, and I also know some of you listen during the day so that I can keep you company as you go to work or run your errands or go for a walk. So however you choose to tune in, I am honored and delighted to have you here. So I want to invite you to take some nice deep breaths in and get comfortable in your body, which is sometimes easier said than done, but just do your best to take a breath in and just breathe love into this beautiful body of yours. And as you do, the angels will amplify this love for you. And I'm going to call the angels in now. I love the ritual of sharing them with you. So I invite you to take a deep breath in as we gently call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And beautiful angels on high, we invite you to join us here, and we feel the sweet invitation that you are bringing us now to join you here in this beautiful circle of light. Angels, I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of love for each of our beloveds listening now. I ask that you shine the light that they might feel inspired as they connect more fully with a greater expanse of all that they are, feeling the light of the divine flowing through now, helping to clear, helping to calibrate, helping to bring in lightness of spirit. And I affirm that right where you are, God is and all is well. And if there are any worries that are feeling weighty to you, just allow the angels to bring light to you now. And I have to say, for some reason, the last few episodes have been a bit noisier, so you may hear the birds, you may hear traffic, and just let it go. Just let it wash over you. So back to this beautiful love the angels are bringing to you. The angels know you have a lot going on in your life. And sometimes that can feel a little bit overwhelming. And if you are moving through one of these passages, they are bringing light to you to help pave your path with more grace. Sparks of inspiration are coming to you, and prayers of ease and grace are being sent your way. There is beauty waiting for you. There are wonderful adventures coming your way. The angels are sending you beautiful waves of support right now. Just take a breath in and allow yourself to be met right where you are right now, and breathe. And as I bring this message forward for you, I feel this deep joy flowing through for you. That even if you are not feeling it right now, that it is being seeded upon your path. And just take a breath in. You know, something I'm guided to share with you is based on an exploration and conversation that I was having with my friends. I have 2 girlfriends that I meet with on Tuesdays, and we support each other and we explore life and spiritual topics. And I always start with a prayer to open sacred circle. I love praying aloud. And I pray before every session and every class. And there's something about using our voice and our words to center in the divine that I find so powerful. And so one of the ways I often start my prayer is with this phrase that I used a little earlier here. I invite you to take a deep breath in as we gently call ourselves forward into the heart of God. And I must have said this phrase 1,000 times before. But on Tuesday, something about it really felt like a profound invitation. That what does it mean to gently call ourselves forward into the heart of God? The gentleness was so present, and it really caused me and my friends to contemplate what that means, to call ourselves gently forward. You know, I don't know about you, but I have that drill sergeant that lives inside of me sometimes. I need to do more. I need to get stuff done. I should be doing things differently. But there's this beautiful invitation from the angels to call ourselves gently into the heart of God. And I want you to just breathe that in, what that would mean for you to call yourself gently into the heart of God. I mean, how much are we craving gentleness right now? I want everything to be gentle. I want the blankets that I sleep under to feel gentle upon my body. I want my pillows to cradle my head gently as I get ready for bed. I want to be able to traverse the world gently. The word and the concept and the vibration of gentleness feels like such a beautiful invitation right now. And so I invite you to take another deep breath in and out and feel the waves of gentleness flowing to you right now. And if you're wondering by chance why the angels and I always invite you to breathe, because clearly you breathe all the time because you're here, there's something about that intentional breath, just even one. As we breathe in this beautiful light that helps us get centered in it, that helps us acknowledge that it is here right now. And this light and love is always here with you. That you need not tune into this podcast or have a session with me for this love to be present with you. It is always with you, my friend. You can always take that deep breath in and call yourself gently into the heart of God. And it will cause you to develop a deeper awareness and relationship with this flow of love that is ever present for you. It is one of my hopes in our time together that this is giving you permission to deepen in your relationship with the divine love that is here for you. You know, a podcast like this one, or having a session, or joining one of my classes. Listen, these can be lovely experiences, and I believe in what I do, and I love what I get to do. And I believe whenever two or more are gathered in the name of the divine, the veil becomes more thin, and it becomes easier to connect. So in my life, I have loved these sort of portals. Whether I was a student in a wonderful class, or working with a mentor, or tuning in to a broadcast that inspires my heart. These are wonderful tools that are available to us, and I am so deeply grateful for them. And I also know that in the middle of an ordinary day, I can simply shift my focus and call in the angels, and they are here. It is the awareness, the focal point, when we shift our focus and remember that this light is here, it is here. Sort of if you are in a room that has blackout curtains and it is dark and it is daytime, all you have to do is open the curtains and the sun is there, assuming you are in a hemisphere where the sun is shining. Only then does the metaphor work, but you get what I mean. Right? It can be in a darkened closet, and it does not mean the light is not present somewhere. It simply means that somehow it has been obscured from me, whether that is through my own choice or circumstance or focus. But through our time together, I am hoping that this is helping you to remember that this light is always here for you. Anytime, day or night, you can call yourself forward into the heart of God. You can say, hey, angels, hi, I could use some help. These relationships are yours. I am here to help amplify them for you so you become more familiar with them and they become easier for you to connect with. But this relationship with the angels and the divine, my friend, these are your relationships. You get to keep them forever. And that makes me so happy. You are so wonderful. You are a generous spirit. You give into this world. This world is better because you are here. And it is my blessing to acknowledge and celebrate you in this moment, to invite you into gentle self-care, to help you receive these blessings that are coming to you now. And so again, just allow your body to relax and rest and receive. And you have permission to drift off whenever that beautiful mystery of sleep comes to you. And while you rest, your angels will be with you. They are supporting you and they are loving you. So while you receive this goodness, I'm going to tell you a story. So for this episode, I'm guided to share with you a little bit about what it was like growing up going to temple. So as most of you know, I grew up Jewish, and this is not going to be about religion, just so you know. Rather, it's going to be just scattered memories about what it was like to grow up as me, a Jewish girl, in the 60s and 70s, the relationship that we had with our temple Beth Israel, some of my memories, and if we have time, I'm going to also share some recipes with you because I often equate all of my memories with food, and I actually have some old sisterhood cookbooks from Temple Beth Israel that I happened to find on eBay, which I was so excited about. So in some ways, this is my tribute to my memories of Temple Beth Israel. And it is a blessing to get to share this with you. These memories are very cherished in my heart. And one of the things I love so much about getting to share my stories with you is that it means they exist somewhere. And that brings me a lot of comfort. So let me start off by sharing with you about Temple Beth Israel. Again, this is not a religious conversation. This is just a piece of my life. So Temple Beth Israel was and is a Reformed congregation, which means there are different ways that people experience Judaism. Some of the forms of religion are much more observant and strict in how they follow Judaism, and some are a little more liberal. So Reformed was one of the more liberal forms of Judaism. So this was a Reformed synagogue. So we didn't keep kosher. We could drive on the Shabbos. It wasn't so liberal that we had guitars and singing in that way, but there was a beautiful lightness of spirit that I experienced growing up in this way. When I was growing up, the synagogue was in a part of Chicago known as Albany Park, which was on the near north side. And the thing that I remember about Temple Beth Israel was the beauty of the congregation and the temple building itself. It was erected in the day when these buildings were magnificent. Temple buildings had a couple of key areas. One was the school building, which was several stories high. No elevators, as I recall. Maybe there was one, but I don't remember using it. And that's where we would go to Sabbath school. So in other episodes, I have shared with you that my parents sent us to Sabbath school, which happened on Saturdays, because that meant we could also attend Saturday services for temple. I, however, wanted to go on Sundays because I wanted to watch Saturday cartoons. So that will tell you what was important to me as a child. But my parents sent me to Sabbath school, so I went on Saturdays. So there was the classroom building, which was adjacent to and connected to the synagogue. So when you came up the stairs to the synagogue, you would go down a few stairs and enter Mendelssohn Hall, which was an overflow synagogue for the High Holy Days. But other than the High Holy Days, it's where the Oneg Shabbat would be after services. And if you've never heard the term Oneg Shabbat, I will share with you what it is. So typically, after services on Friday night or Saturday morning, there is an Oneg Shabbat where there are small glasses of wine, usually a challah, and a nash, some sort of pastries, maybe some salad, something to eat. So a huge part of the memories was going into Mendelssohn Hall after services, and then you get a treat. So as I've shared with you, I'm very food centric, so I guess it's no surprise that that is the first thing I share with you, where there were treats involved. But the main synagogue was up on the second floor. And so you would go up these stairs, and the synagogue itself was magnificent. I don't know if it was a 2-story or 3-story, like cathedral ceiling, but as a child, I remember going in there, and it was awe-inspiring. It had 2-story stained glass windows along both sides of it, so during the daytime, they would be illuminated from the sun, and it was so beautiful. And then you have the pulpit, or the bima, as it is called in Hebrew. And that's where the ark is. And the ark is where the Torahs are stored. And then there is a light that is always on at the ark, and that is called the Ner Tamid, or the eternal flame. So walking into the synagogue was this magnificent experience. And I remember feeling like, of course God lives here. Of course God is here. Look at how beautiful this is. And if you have gone to a place for your spiritual enrichment, whether it was a church or a mosque, or even hiking up a mountain, that you will likely know that feeling when you are in a place of such beauty and sacredness that you can feel God. That is how I would feel. Not all the time. Listen, I was a kid. I don't want to make it sound like I was this precocious spiritual savant back then. I was a kid, right? So that also meant that I didn't care about a lot of this. But in retrospect, I can feel how the beauty of the synagogue really helped me open to the love that I have now for the spiritual connection. So growing up, going to temple was a regular part of my life. And it was also a place where I really felt at home. My family was very involved in the congregation. My father was in the Brotherhood. He was the president of the Brotherhood for a year or two, or maybe longer. My family knew a lot of people there, and I had a lot of friends there. So I also sang in the choir, which was a big deal. I loved getting to be in the children's choir. So you had to audition, and pretty much everybody got in. This was not a exclusive invitation to join the choir, but part of it was that you had to go to rehearsals. So you had to have a parent, or your parent would have to arrange for a carpool to drive to the temple once a week for rehearsals. And I think probably some parents didn't want to be bothered. But I was fortunate, and my sister also, we sang in the choir, which was a lot of fun. And there was a choir loft, so we would go up these stairs, and it was screened off. And I loved getting to be in that choir loft because no one could see us. And as a kid, I don't know, I thought no one could hear us, but of course everybody could. But we would send each other notes and whisper to each other during services. Because, listen, as much as the synagogue itself was beautiful, I thought the services were boring, which is okay. I was a kid, right? Services can be very boring, but I was there, right? I got points for attendance. I showed up, and I would say all the prayers when I was supposed to. I would stand up when the congregation stood up, and I would sit down, and I would sing the songs. And so I loved being a part of the children's choir there and had so many cool experiences. And then after services was the Oneg Shabbat, where we got snacks. So that was super cool. And then, of course, I got to have my bat mitzvah in the synagogue. So a bat mitzvah and a bar mitzvah. So bat and bar mitzvahs happen when you're 13 years old. And it is about stepping into adulthood as a Jewish person. And so it's a huge deal. And, I suppose in some ways it would be similar to a Sweet 16 or quinceañera or something where it's all about you. It's supposed to be about God, but in truth, in my 13-year-old consciousness, it was all about me. This was my moment to shine. And, friends come and relatives come. It's a big deal. And so I had my bat mitzvah there. And that was a joyful experience. And we had really good pastries. Again, just relating it back to food. We had really good food for the Oneg Shabbat. And the temple itself ultimately was sold. The neighborhood was changing, and the members of the congregation were moving into the northern suburbs. So somewhere around 1980, that beautiful temple building was sold and then became a Korean Methodist church, which again, a beautiful place to bring God in. And the temple moved to Skokie. And so they're now in a really lovely building, but I don't necessarily have the same relationship to it that I did to the one in Albany Park. But the temple itself, they have been with my family since before I was born. My grandparents actually were members. So there's this lineage of love there for me with Temple Beth Israel. And they have cared for our family through profoundly meaningful passages. Actually, my husband and I had the blessing of getting married at Temple Beth Israel. So their present rabbi, Rabbi Weinberg, performed our wedding ceremony, which was lovely to be a part of that continuity there. And he and the congregation also helped us through the transition of our parents. And so it's so lovely to me to contemplate this relationship that was seeded back in the day from my grandparents, back in the 1920s. And my mother and her sisters were confirmed there. They didn't have bat mitzvahs back then for girls, but they were confirmed and they attended school there. And then me and my siblings were there. And so it's really lovely to feel into this congregation and this synagogue, this lineage that has been a part of my family throughout my life. And so that's part of what I want to pay tribute to in this episode is these lines of energy that get seeded for us almost before we're born. And so when I think of Temple Beth Israel, I have such warmth and gratitude for all the people, all the men and women who devoted their life force into this congregation, the members of the sisterhood, the members of the brotherhood, the members of the steering committee, the rabbis, the secretaries, the teachers. You know what? Wait, I have one sweet story I want to share with you. So, in 4th grade, I seem to recall, is when we would go to Hebrew school. So we would go to Sabbath school to learn about Judaism. And then there was Hebrew school where you would learn Hebrew. Now, before you get excited, I cannot speak Hebrew. I do not have a gift for learning other languages. I have taken some Spanish, some French, and Hebrew. I speak none of them. So, not so great at picking up other languages. But in 4th grade, I seem to recall, is when we started Hebrew school. And one of the things, that first day or so in Hebrew school, is the teacher gives you a Hebrew name. So she would translate your English name to Hebrew. So if your name was Rachel, it would be Rachel. If it was Sam, it would be Shmuel. So there would be this Hebrew name that you would be given that they would use in Hebrew school. And I remember when she comes to me, and I have no recollection what the name was, but her translation of Laurel was, I'm sorry, the birds are going crazy outside. They're agreeing with my story. Her translation of Laurel was very guttural and nothing lovely about it. And I remember coming home and saying to my mom, I hate my Hebrew name. This cannot be my name. And my mother, who always knew how to calm me down, said, why don't you ask her what your Hebrew name is for your middle name? And I was like, that's genius. Okay. And so my given middle name is Eileen, spelled with an I after my grandfather, Isidore. So I went to her. I said, listen, I don't like whatever the name was that she gave me. My middle name is Eileen. What would that be in Hebrew? And she said, Elana. And I loved that. I was like, Elana, that's beautiful. Can I be Elana? And she said, okay. So throughout Hebrew school, I was Elana. And I have always loved that name. And I never officially changed my birth name. But from that point on, I always used Alana as my middle name. I no longer use a middle name. I'm Laurel Bleadon-Maffei, and that's more than enough names and letters for my identification. But I was remembering that as I was contemplating this episode, was how horrified I was at the translation of Laurel into Hebrew. And I have no idea what it was. But I loved Ilana. So for my bat mitzvah, I was listed as Laurel Ilana Bleadon. And that made me so happy. So just a little snippet of life there of what it was to grow up as a Jewish girl named Laurel, which translated into some very guttural thing that I hated. And so I changed my name before it was fashionable. I was like, I do not like that name. Give me another choice. I have always been somebody who wants to know what my other choices are. You say it's A, what is B? So I became Laurel Ilana Bleadon. And learning Hebrew was not easy for me. So in Hebrew, you have to learn a different alphabet, which is called the Aleph Bet, because Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, or the Aleph Bet. And these little snippets of memories of Hebrew stay with me. For instance, counting 1 to 3, Echad is 1, Shtayim I think is 2, and Shlosh is 3. And I remember watching an episode of NCIS with Ziva David, and she mentioned Shlosh Stooges, and I got so excited I screamed to Wes, that's the 3 Stooges, I remember Shlosh. So very little do I remember of my Hebrew. I remember that napkin is mapit, and I know the prayers, so that's about all I can remember. And I'll also share, I guess, now that we would go away to sleepaway camp, which again was a way to extend our Jewish experience. I went to Olin Sang Ruby Union Institute Camp in Oconomowac, Wisconsin. How's that for a mouthful? So the name of the camp was Olin Sang Ruby Union Institute, or it would be shortened to Asrui. And then the town was Oconomowac in Wisconsin. So we called it Oconomowac. And it was wonderful, and it's so interesting. I think I've shared with you that I have come to realize that I have travel anxiety. I don't want to make this sound really heavy because I don't experience it as such, but whenever I have to go somewhere to travel, I don't want to go. The act of leaving my home to go somewhere else is not easy for me. And the thing that I was remembering is that is how I felt about summer camp. I wanted to go and I didn't want to go. So here's what that would look like. So when it was all conceptual, probably in the spring or so, I was all in. I for sure wanted to go to camp, and we would pick which cycle I would go to. My parents would register me, which really means my mom would do that. And then we get the list of everything we needed, and it's very exciting at this point, right? How many pairs of shorts, and a swimsuit, and a sleeping bag, and everything is coming together for camp, and I'm talking about it with my friends. And then comes the day when it's time to go. At this point, I'm still excited because the adventure is about to start. So my travel anxiety was a little different back then. And you get on the bus, and I'm with my friends, and we're excited, and we're singing songs as we get driven to Oconomowac, Wisconsin. And then we get there, and we have to pick our bunks or our tents or wherever we're going to be sleeping, depending on which kind of camp we were going to. And then I get homesick. And then I miss my mom. And I miss my house. And I would always start off my first few days of camp homesick. Right? There were new people. Maybe I didn't know as many people as I thought I did. Everything was different. And I would write my parents these very sad letters about how much I missed them and I couldn't wait to come home and I was having a terrible time. I was very melodramatic. And then my parents would proceed to worry about me. Not knowing that I was actually fine, because I was. Because at some point, camp in the cycle of the 5 to 10 days, however long I was there, would no longer be new. It would be comfortable for me. And we would be going swimming, and we would have beautiful Shabbat services, and I would have made friends. And so by the time it came for me to go home, my parents would always drive up to Wisconsin to pick us up. And whenever my parents came to pick us up, it would be at the end of the closing ceremony, and I would be sobbing my eyes out, having to leave. I would be sobbing, saying, "No, I don't want to come home. I love it here." And my mother always laughed at me because of this. She said, "You were so miserable when you would first get there." And I would be so worried about you. And then every time you had to come home, you would sob your eyes out. You would grieve so deeply it was over. And I think it is so interesting that that pattern still exists in me today. Right? This idea of having to leave my home, to leave my comfort zone, it doesn't come easily to me. And so I don't know why. One of the things in some of my classes, I actually have a class right now that I'm putting together, and I think we're going to talk about this, is who have you always been? What has always been true about you? And I find it fascinating to look back, especially, as we're talking about this episode in the context of this conversation. I have always been somebody who loves being in a place of sacredness and awe when it comes to the divine, whether it's standing in front of a gorgeous sunset, whether it is being in a beautiful synagogue, whether it is participating in a prayer service. That has always had profound meaning to me. And then also, of course, are there treats involved? Has always been profoundly important to me. And then this resistance to being in a new place, feeling out of place, feeling unsettled, feeling overwhelmed by the newness and the unfamiliarity, which I guess is the same way of saying the same thing twice, but that has always been hard for me. But once something is my comfort zone, I'm all in. So those first few days of camp were really hard for me. I don't do well in those new kinds of experiences. I want to know. I want things to feel familiar. I want my bubble of comfort to go with me wherever I go. So that was Olin saying Ruby Union Institute Camp in Oconomowac, Wisconsin. And I also did go to Camp Shai, which was the other Jewish camp. But most of my memories are about Oconomowac. And how much I loved it there. We would have Sabbath services outside under the trees. And that's an easy way to know that God is there. And just my great love for the Jewish experiences that I had growing up. They were always with me. They were always a part of my life. And I have such love and respect for how I was raised, and that I got to be raised in an environment filled with so much love and continuity and rituals and feeling a connection with my people and my ancestors. Right? There's this line of continuity that wrapped me in its warm embrace in the most wonderful of ways. And so here I am now, right? I feel like I am absolutely culturally Jewish for sure. And my idea of religion has certainly shifted over the years. And yet this beautiful thread of love, of reverence, of ritual, of connection is still with me. It is still a part of my life. So thank you so much for letting me share this with you. And we did not get to any of the wonderful Jewish recipes, but I am going to do an episode about that because I'm very excited not only to share the recipes with you, but to also pay tribute to many of the women of the Jewish sisterhood at Temple Beth Israel who were a part of my life. So that'll be a future episode. So in the meanwhile, I wish you the sweetest of dreams. I send you love and I send you gratitude for the opportunity to spend this time with you. So you rest well, and we'll connect again soon. I love you, and thank you.